Hi, mystery writers. Welcome to Write a Killer Mystery, where we learn to make a good mystery great. My name is Zara Altair, and today we're going to talk about the five senses and how to use them in your story to improve reader engagement. So your story is more than action and dialogue. When you're deep into the writing flows, it's easy to go with what happens next and you're focused on moving the story forward. But often that push to the story is easy to forget to ground your reader in the surroundings. And the five senses are a way to connect with your reader and to give them an immediate sense of where your characters are and how they are affected by the surroundings. And the reason that's so important is it connects your reader with your character. So the five senses are a way to connect with your reader, to give them an immediate sense of where your characters are. And it doesn't take much to add that sensory detail. But at the same time, with those little tiny details, you're adding a powerful connection to your story. Because sensory detail is often overlooked in that first draft, I'm going to kind of think about how you add sensory detail in your editing sessions. I mean, if you put it in your first draft, that's great. But you want to make sure when you're editing that it's there and almost ever present. You want it in every scene. One way you can do this is when you're looking at the last things that you wrote in your last prior writing session before you start your new writing session. That's a good time to mark places where you can add sensory details. Okay, so let's go with the five senses. So let's start with sight, because it's the most likely one that you'll use in that first draft. Visual description is the most common element when we write that first draft, and the trick to bringing visual images in your story is not through long narrative description, but to focus on the details. So you also want to eliminate he saw or she saw sentences. When you're editing, you can use your writing software's function for find every instance of he saw or she saw and change it, because you don't want those sentences in there, because you want to present the object instead. So for example, the Buick side mirror flashed red in the sunlight is much more powerful than off to the left, Emily saw the Buick's mirror gleam red. So just search for those he saw, she saw sentences and change them to the object, and that gives that immediacy to the scene and to the object. You really want to connect those visuals with your character's emotions. So one of the best ways you can do that is to use descriptive words. So there's an apartment block. Your character's standing in front of the apartment block, and you can hint at the emotions inside your character by adding just one word. The apartment block loomed above her. Or the apartment block soared above her. So you immediately giving a sense of how she's responding to this big building in front of her. So each description gives an alternator emotional sense of the visual. So if you just plop in those words, it'll help get that emotional tie across to your reader. And as you can see, just one word can tie the emotion to the character and connect with the reader's sense of the story. Okay, and sound. Ordinary, everyday sounds help to ground the reader in your setting. And from the clatter of pans in the kitchen to the howls of wolves in the forest, those sounds give your reader a sense of place and what's happening in that place. And sound also elicits emotions in your reader. If your character is in the bedroom, there can be birds chirping outside in the trees and out the window, and that creates a sense of peace and security. Or in the same bedroom, the floorboards creak outside the door, and that evokes a sense of foreboding, and it creates some tension. So the sounds that your characters hear will have a big emotional impact on your reader. So, and then one note about sounds. Onomatopoeia, I've seen it, I've seen advice that says use onomatopoeia in your story. Okay, we're writing mysteries, and onomatopoeia works in children and young adult literature. It works really well for mysteries. You want to keep those plop, thud, hiss words to a minimum. You just want to use onomatopoeia sparingly in adult fiction. So just a little footnote about sound. All right, so, and smell. Scents are provocative in life, and they're provocative in fiction. And in our brain, smell is tied to memory. If you read Proust, you know this very well. And when you mention scents in your story, you connect with the reader's memory. So those scents that you put in your story really have a very strong connection with your reader. Now, the English language doesn't have a large scent vocabulary. So what you can do when you're talking about scents and the things that your characters smell, you can borrow, you can evoke those scents by borrowing from other senses and nouns and verbs and metaphors to imply the emotional qualities, because remember, with scents, it's tied to memory, and those scents are going to be very strong memories for your reader. So here's some examples, like the pungent rose filled the room with summer. Okay, so summer is like a sense of how that smell pervades the room. And on the other hand, the cemetery smelled of longing and regret. And that is the character's own personal sense of what they smell when they're in the cemetery. So you can really hook up those emotions with your scent descriptions and really give them a big connection for your reader that really ties your reader into the story. I'm going to talk about all of this when we get to the end here. Okay, touch. Touch is all around us, and it's all around your characters. And touch is real, and it's very immediate. So what touch does when your character feels something is touch plunges your reader immediately into that world. It's less subjective than sounds or smell. It really provides some immediacy, and so no matter what your character is touching, your reader feels it. They feel it. And don't forget, skin is the largest organ in our body, and touch conveys a spectrum of sensations. It's more than hard or soft or smooth or rough. Touch senses vibrations and temperature and pleasure and pain, and the variety of sensations provide you with many ways to add touch in every scene. Okay, taste is probably the most elusive sense that we can put in our stories. Although it's a universal sense, it is very subjective, and you can use this subjectivity to your advantage when something lands on your character's tongue. And a part of what happens too is a touch. So you can often mix texture and the taste of something, and what your character eats, what they like and dislike, how they respond to anything they're eating, deepens a reader's understanding of that character. And you're once again building empathy around your character's personal response to what they're tasting. And even if your reader doesn't like that particular food, let's just pick one out of the air, strawberries, they will empathize with your character's pleasurable response. So also remember that taste is not just about food. It's always fun to write about food, but taste happens in other ways too in your story. If your character falls down, all of a sudden they have a mouthful of dirt. What does that feel like? What does it taste like? Or they're swimming and they get chlorine water in their mouth, or salt water in their mouth. You can use those things too. The main thing with the five senses is to build a sensory connection with your reader. Each of the five senses has a unique and powerful impact on your reader, and so you really want those sensory details in each and every scene of your story. So as you edit your manuscript, check each scene for sensory details, and it's good to include at least 2 senses. Pick any 2 in each scene, because each one has a touch point for emotional engagement with your reader. The senses are so immediate and so personal for readers, and it's like this instant connection with your character, and little details build that connection with your characters, and that connection increases how much they care about your character, and the more they care, the higher the tension in the story when your character meets an obstacle, because the sensory details have created this very subtle emotional connection. Your reader may not know why they care, but the sensory details have enriched your story and tied them to your character. All right, that's it for today. I hope that helps. And once again, I'd like to mention that Audible is a sponsor for Write a Killer Mystery, and you can check the link in the description below. You can get a 30-day free trial to Audible, and there are all kinds of stories and novels. And also Audible has a collection of like their own recordings, and they have, as a member, they have stories that are free to subscribers every month. So anyway, I encourage you to check it out. Audible is a great way to listen to mysteries while you're doing other things, as it were. Like I like to go out in the garden and putter around, and I listen. That's just my example. So anyway, check out Audible. I want to thank them again for supporting Write a Killer Mystery. In the meanwhile, keep writing. Don't forget to subscribe and click that little notification bell so you won't miss another episode of Write a Killer Mystery. And I will see you next time.